Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter in for Stephanie Domerant. I'm guest hosting for this week's episode, and we have a very special show for you. We are honored to have 4 of Oregon's 5 congresswomen joining us. We'll talk about the Trump administration, the actions the president and Elon Musk are taking. We'll talk about Congress, what the congresswomen are doing for their districts, and we mark Women's History Month.
A sufficient number having risen.
For 11 years, beginning in 2012, when Suzanne Bonamici was first elected to Congress, she was the only woman on the delegation. That has certainly changed. Now 5 of Oregon's 6 representatives are women. Here's a quick introduction for our representatives. Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici represents the 1st District. She's in her 7th full term and is now the longest-serving member of Oregon's current U.S. House delegation. She's on the Education and Workforce Committee and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. She's also the ranking member on the Early Childhood and Secondary Education Subcommittee. Congresswoman Andrea Salinas represents Oregon's newest district, the 6th District, and is in her 2nd term. She's on the House Committees on Agriculture and Science, Space, and Technology. And she's co-chair of the Mental Health Caucus. Our newest members are Dr. Maxine Dexter, who was elected last November to succeed longtime Congressman Earl Blumenauer in Oregon's 3rd District. She's on the House Natural Resources and Veterans Affairs Committees, and is the ranking member on the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations. And Congresswoman Janelle Bynum flipped her district, defeating Republican Congresswoman Lori Chavez-Dreamer in November to represent Oregon's 5th District. She's on the House Financial Services Committee and the Housing and Insurance and Capital Markets subcommittees.
And here they are. Thank you all for being here. What an honor to have you all here at the same time.
It's wonderful to be here.
Thanks for having us.
I do want to mention that the 4th District is represented by Val Hoyle, and unfortunately she couldn't be here. And the 2nd District is represented by Republican Congressman Cliff Bentz, and we hope to have him on a future show. But I want to take the time, before we get to all the issues facing the country and facing all of you, take the time to recognize this historic moment with 5 women representing 5 of the 6 districts in Oregon for the very first time. It's Women's History Month. March 8th is International Women's Day. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Congresswoman Bonamici, when you were first elected, you were the lone congresswoman.
That's right.
So what does it mean to you to have all these incredible women joining you on the delegation?
It's very exciting, and not just because they're women, but because they are amazing, experienced lawmakers who are there to make a difference for the people they represent. So yes, for more than a decade, it was me and the guys, and now it is really a delegation full of amazing women and our friend Cliff Bentz from Eastern Oregon.
Representative Bynum, you grew up in D.C.
Yes.
And you are making your own history. What is it like to be back in D.C. as an elected congresswoman, the first Black member of Congress in Oregon history?
Well, it's like a little girl coming home, but I grew up on a different side of town than Capitol Hill, and it's interesting to see how, it really is the center of power for the world, and a dream come true for a little girl that just grew up in the shadows of the Capitol.
Well, it's just so great to have you all here, and I want to let our viewers know that we're taping this on Friday, February 28th, and by the time this airs, things may have changed because things are happening so fast.
Daily.
Yes, you can't keep up just with the daily stuff. But March 4th is the State of the Union, and this will air after that. But I want to ask each of you, go down the table. We'll start with Representative Salinas, how you would describe the State of the Union today in a couple of words or a couple of sentences. Representative?
I would say that we are at a point where we could be in a constitutional crisis. And I think, Donald Trump, with the help of Elon Musk, is taking a wrecking ball to our federal government and hurting everyday families, hurting us in terms of taking away health care, nutrition benefits, water infrastructure in communities like Carlton. So it is going to affect people all over this country, Americans from every walk of life. And it feels really dangerous.
Representative Bynum.
I would say even though we're in the minority, I think there are 2 goals for us. Number 1, to listen, and number 2, to protect. So I have a purple district. Not everybody believes the same thing. So it's still my job to listen to how people get to their yes, like on our budget. I mean, I'm a no, but how do they get to their yes? But also to protect those things that are so valuable to Oregonians. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all of those things that make life better for everyday Oregonians.
Representative Dexter.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I feel like our State of the Union is threatened and unstable, and we do need to listen to our constituents right now. And I have the privilege of representing the 3rd District, which is very activated and progressive and frustrated right now. And so I think listening is key, but also being reflecting back their emotions and showing that we are willing to step in and take action at this time, not laying still, letting this happen.
I have to ask you, because you made national headlines and you went viral.
You didn't warn me you were going to bring this up.
Something you said, I won't play it, but something you
Maxine
said
has a potty mouth.
at a union meeting in D.C. A lot of federal workers were there. You used a 4-letter word to describe President Trump, and it was on John Oliver. I mean, it was everywhere. Do you have any regrets about that?
Not at all. I think what I was doing at that moment was standing with probably 1,000 federal workers whose livelihoods were in the balance. And as we were getting ready to go up, they were talking to us about their fear and their frustration and the tragedy of having their country turn their back on them. A third of them are veterans. I serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee. And so I think, again, as a physician, you connect with people and their emotions to earn their trust. And frankly, that's what I was doing. They wanted me to swear, and frankly, I don't regret that.
It's not something you usually do.
No, clearly, I was awkward about it, and as my kids said, they appreciated the intention, but not the execution.
Representative Bonamici, how would you describe the State of the Union?
Chaos, and I share the concerns of my wonderful colleagues here, and I've listened as well. I had 5 town hall meetings last week when I was home, and people are terrified. They're really worried about their future, their children. I work on a lot of education issues. People are wondering what will happen if the Department of Education is dismantled, which is what we expect they're trying to do and will do if they can, but we're going to do everything we can to stop them. So I agree that people are concerned. It is chaotic, but it is also very worrisome because they're trying to overload us with chaos so we don't pay attention.
So flooding the zone.
Flooding
right?
the zone, exactly. But we can't do that. What we're fighting for, and you heard some of the things here, the federal jobs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, NOAA, they just cut hundreds of people from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. These are the people who give us tsunami warnings and monitor extreme weather events and ocean health. It's going to be devastating. And that's just one example of many examples. So the State of the Union is chaos, but we are fighting back because what we're fighting for, whether it be public education, against climate change, this is too important.
Representative Salinas, you mentioned a constitutional crisis, but if people don't think there's a constitutional crisis, I've heard it asked, is there a constitutional crisis? I mean, a lot of supporters of the president say, this is what democracy looks like. A majority of people voted for President Trump. He said very clearly what he was going to do: mass deportations, tariffs. He was going to cut taxes. He wanted to break things, shake things up, reduce the size of federal government. So what do you say to those folks who say this is what the people wanted? Representative Bynum, do you want to answer that?
Well, I'll defer to
Okay, Representative Salinas.
Thank you. So I've been carrying around our Constitution because I do think it's really important that people recognize Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the power of the purse, not the president. And so the fact that he is, again, taking a wrecking ball to Medicaid, which here in Oregon is the Oregon Health Plan, we have, hundreds of thousands of people who get their health care through Medicaid. And what he wants to do is take this health care away and actually give a huge tax break to his billionaire friends. That is not what is prescribed in the Constitution. It is up to Congress, who has the power of the purse, to tax and then to spend those taxpayer dollars.
So Congress just passed a resolution this week, narrowly passed by Republicans, that sets the framework for President Trump's budget and does include $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, $2 trillion in spending cuts of federal spending over a decade. You all voted no. Now the next thing that happens, March 14th, is the budget deadline. If Republicans come up with the plan that's a bridge too far for all of you, are you willing to vote no and risk a government shutdown? Does anybody want to tackle that question, Representative?
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say, if the proposal they put forward is anything like this budget resolution, absolutely will vote no, because we are hearing loud and clear from our constituents. And you mentioned, Laurel, that people voted for this. People wanted government efficiency. And I've said, we're always trying to find smarter, better ways to do things, but what they're doing is neither smart nor better. They're not really saving that much money, if at all, and they're doing it without really thought about what they're cutting. And so I had people in red counties, not just Portland, but across Northwest Oregon, who are really worried about these cuts, like to the Bonneville Power Administration, for example, to Head Start, to Medicaid. People are really worried about the way they're going about this. And if they put forth a proposal that's going to do that much damage, they're in the majority, they will own it.
And you'd risk government shutdown?
So I want to just clarify the two different things, because the continuing resolution is what we need to renew to keep the government open.
Right.
I don't think a single one of us wants a government shutdown. The budget resolution is getting conflated with the continuing resolution because of Speaker Johnson putting March 15th as the deadline. So I believe, and Musk said it in a cabinet meeting yesterday, that he wants the government to shut down, that might be a good idea. That hurts Americans. It hurts every single one of our constituents who aren't billionaires, who then can sweep in and take an advantage of it. It undermines our courts. The courts are our protective line right now. If they can't be open during a shutdown, bad things can happen. So I think we must do what we can to keep the government open and lay on the line for Medicaid being protected and people in that budget resolution, which are two separate issues.
A couple things there. You talked about the courts, and there's a lot of discussion about the courts being the guardrail, the backstop. But there's also discussion that the president might not abide by what the courts say. Are you all prepared to operate in a world where the old rules may not apply, Representative Bynum?
So I'm naturally a disruptor. So I'm down for the cause of shaking things up. And that's whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter to me. The problem that we have is not the what, it's the how. And I don't understand how you can summon the deeper demons of Americans to turn us against one another. That is not an American value, number one. Number two, I think people will take to the streets. We've already seen Boston kind of gearing up. Like, you want to come to Boston, get ready to have your butt kicked.
Because we've been hearing that the really protests have been much more muted than in 2017.
Oh, yeah.
Like, where's the resistance?
You know, there was the Boston Tea Party. That is real, and we are seeing history repeat itself. You know, with one of the votes we had on immigration, I talked about the repeat of the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. We are going back in time, and that's what I mean by there's a difference between the what and the how. The how is taking us back in time. Sure, we can move forward with trimming government and making it much more efficient. Yes, absolutely. But when we harm everyday Americans, that's where I draw the line.
And Representative Dexter, your very first bill that you passed was the Stop Musk Act, or that you introduced.
I was going to say,
and
I'd be delighted if it passed, but
We're going to claim that.
But let's talk about Elon Musk, private citizen, richest man in the world, not elected. He's been described as a co-president, a shadow president. He was front and center at the first cabinet meeting. What would your bill do, and does it even have a chance of passing?
I am going to do everything I can to fight Elon Musk and the billionaire takeover of our country, period, full stop. This bill's not going to pass. I mean, I will fight for it, but the reality is we've got a Republican trifecta. There's no way that this is going to be done. And frankly, all it says is that if federal employees refuse to take illegal action, that they cannot be retaliated against. That's already law. The fact that we would say such a thing is reflective of the creating chaos, cruelty, and disruption that this administration's trying to do right now. So it is more than anything trying to reflect back to my community what we are trying to stand for right now. And the bottom line is billionaires are trying to take over our country. Working families are losing if this administration carries out Project 2025, which they are doing to a T right now.
They had front row seats at the inauguration.
They did.
I'm short. I was in the back. They had better seats than we did. Like, it was a real display of what was important in this country at the time. And I live with that memory of being put in the back while the Billionaire Boys Club was in the front.
And if I could add too, you mentioned earlier, Laurel, that this is what people voted for. They didn't vote for Elon Musk. And I heard that again and again in the 5 town hall meetings I did, not only in urban areas, but suburban and rural as well. And what really concerns me is, I agree, this is really unprecedented, the role that he's playing. There's a colossal conflicts of interest. He has multiple government contracts. We keep finding example after example of things that he's doing that benefit him financially. I mean, it's shocking.
But is there any stopping him?
Well, we're doing everything we can to raise awareness, and
Yeah.
Our Republican colleagues are hearing this as well. The Republicans who have been having town hall meetings, they have people show up in their districts and raise a lot of concerns. So I'm hoping that pretty soon they grow a spine and do what's right for the country and the people they represent, not what's right for Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
I just want to, sorry, I'm going to jump in. We did an oversight hearing this week about space mining, literally mining on asteroids and planets. There's only one reason that the Republicans brought that hearing forward, and that is because SpaceX is making the rockets that would take people to explore up there. It is absolutely open game on the federal taxpayer dollar.
Representative Salinas, you had town hall down in Salem with Senator Merkley. You've also had a survey where you're asking your constituents some of their stories. Give us an example of what you're hearing.
So as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I'm hearing from some of my rural communities. I heard from Carlton, who is expected to get some assistance with their sewer and wastewater systems. And they're going to lose out on millions of dollars. And these are funds that they are already going into contracts with, trying to figure out how they repair their system right now. I've also heard from small businesses in Sheridan who, there's a small business owner who is trying to commercialize maple syrup out in Sheridan. They've been working with the Oregon State University on this. And their loan that they were expected to get from the federal government has dried up suddenly. And so these are real people on the ground in rural communities that are just trying to get by. And now Elon Musk is coming in again with a sledgehammer to say no, no, and no. This is in the guise of waste, fraud, and abuse. This isn't waste, fraud, and abuse. This is people who are trying to live their lives, work to make sure that they put food on the table and that they can get their kids a good education to get the next generation to move forward. And I want to put a finer point on what my colleagues have been saying here. We don't own these mistakes. The Republicans are in control of the Senate, the House, and the White House. If anything goes wrong, we are raising the alarm bells. We are doing what we can. We are letting our constituents know. We are trying to mobilize. We are trying to legislate. We are supporting litigation as well. But none of this is in our control. It is on the Republicans.
These are not normal times.
No.
Well, people need to understand that politics is about numbers. Numbers first. If you have the numbers, you control the agenda. You get the gavels for the committees, you set the agenda, you tell us when we're going to vote on what we're going to vote. Like, it is purely a numbers game. And so because we're 3 seats short of that, we need 3 Republicans to step up and say, this is not really what we need to be doing. That's the main thing that people need to understand as they vote and as they say they want checks and balances. They have eliminated
Let me
checks
stop you
and
there
balances.
because we need to take a break, but there's so much more to talk about. We need an hour, we need 2 hours, but we're going to continue our conversation with our Congresswoman right after the break. And be sure to tune in for our bonus episode. It's streaming on the TV app KGW+. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, guest hosting the show this week, and we're honored to have joining us 4 of the 5 women on Oregon's congressional delegation as we honor them and celebrate Women's History Month. Once again, so great to have you all here. I'd like to start with Representative Bynum, and we've been talking about the cuts, those federal cuts that DOJ has been making in Elon Musk, and let's talk about the impact of those cuts. And during the break, you were telling me about something in Clackamas County.
Yeah, I got a call from the Clackamas County Sheriff, telling me that our Family Justice Center was at risk, and this is where we help families that are dealing with domestic violence. Also, at the DA's office, the victims' advocates, that funding is at stake as well. So these are real-life examples of what can happen if Republicans have their way with cutting and slashing everything.
The cuts just don't make sense. My guest for the address to Congress, the State of the Union, a wonderful Oregonian, Ariel Kane, who is doing amazing research on how we can reduce our high maternal mortality rate. They fired her. So these cuts do not save money. They do not make sense. They're cruel, and they're going to hurt Oregonians and Americans.
I think yeah, absolutely. The NIH cuts right now are putting a
National
huge,
Institutes of
yes,
Health.
Thank
right?
you, thank you. They really threaten the innovation and extrapolation of information for science across our country, and especially for medical revelations that really drive our healthcare system. So,
and OHSU is a major recipient of NIH funding. How will it impact OHSU?
It's roughly $80 million at stake for them. It's an enormous undermining of their ability to deliver on their promise. And also, having been an academic physician, you train your whole lives. You spend time bringing postdoctorate students into postdoctorate candidates into your labs, and they're all going to be without any funding, and they're not going to just wait for Congress to get its act together again. They're going to go to the private sector, and we lose a whole generation of scientists.
I want to touch Representative Salinas on tariffs, and we can talk more about this in the bonus episode, but you've been a vocal opponent of the tariffs against Mexico and Canada and other trading partners. The president has said it will lead to American prosperity, that it may hurt at first, but it'll eventually be good for the country. How do you see it impacting people in your district?
His statement that this is going to help workers in the U.S. is a flat-out lie. The reason it's going to hurt us is because, first of all, the tariffs are outrageously high. 25% tariffs on goods coming from Mexico or Canada are just outrageous. And so we've already heard about retaliation. Immediately, I heard from my wine growers when this proposal was first put out, essentially saying almost 50% of Oregon wine is exported to Canada. So they started losing contracts, product was being taken off the shelf. And this doesn't just hurt the wine growers or, some snobby wine connoisseur who loves their Oregon Pinot Noir. This hurts workers. This hurts the entire supply chain. This hurts our local economies in the Willamette Valley. And so I have been pushing other regional wine members of Congress who also have wine in their districts to say, hey, let's push back on this. It has been all Democrats who have been speaking out, and I haven't been able to get one Republican on board to stand up for their wine growers.
I want to just touch on this. We don't have a lot of time left, about a minute or so to touch on this, but you're on the Veterans Affairs Committee, Representative Dexter, and you held a hearing this last week. Thousands of veterans have been fired across multiple federal agencies, and the Pentagon has ordered transgender service members to be separated from the military. What are your concerns? What did you hear at the hearing?
Yeah, so we were dealing with our veterans who have served and are not getting the benefits that they deserve, and those are being directly impacted by these firings. A third of our federal employee workforce are veterans. Half of them are disabled, largely from service, and the VA already is known to be delayed in getting care and services to our veterans. So the slashing is absolutely delaying the care that we owe to these veterans. But then to also eliminate transgender soldiers from active duty. These are people who are serving our country and have very impressive skills and history of service. That is absolutely outlandish and antithetical to what we as Americans should be supporting.
We have just over a minute left, but as the senior member of the Oregon delegation, Congresswoman Bonamici, I want to give you the final word, about 30 seconds.
Thank you. You can see why I'm so excited to serve with these amazing colleagues. I want to encourage everyone who's listening today, if you have a story, if you're a federal employee, if you care about the cuts, for example, in education, they want to cut federal dollars on education. That's Title I that helps schools with low-income students. That's IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, for students with disabilities. That's Pell Grants for people who want to access affordable higher education. Please call your representative, call your senators, but also talk to your friends and neighbors and let them know this what's happening now with these cuts is chaotic. We want to hear from you. We want you to stay engaged, and we want to be your voice.
Well, thank you all so much for being here, and they've generously agreed to a bonus episode, so check that out on KGW+, and join Stephanie Domerant next week for Straight Talk. Have a great week.